The storm raged that night, turning the forest into a sea of shadows whipped by the wind. Nathan Reynolds, just 10 years old, ran along the dirt path, his feet sinking in the mud as cold raindrops lashed at his face. He shouldn't have been out there alone, but something made him stop suddenly. A sound cut through the roar of the rain. A scream. High-pitched, desperate. Nathan turned toward the riverbank. The water, swollen from the storm, rushed angrily, swallowing everything in its path. And then he saw it, a small figure struggling against the current, little hands flailing, sinking and rising again in the dark waters. A girl. Nathan's heart raced. Without thinking, he ran along the bank, watching her body being carried away by the force of the river. Branches snapped beneath his feet, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop. "Hold on. I'm going to save you," he shouted, but the girl just coughed, growing weaker with each passing moment. Up ahead, a fallen log stretched over the water. It was his only chance. Nathan ran toward it, scrambling hastily. The wood was slippery and the current roared below him, threatening to pull him under too. But he balanced himself and, at the last second, lunged forward. His arm grabbed the girl's wrist. She gasped, her green eyes wide with terror. The river's strength almost pulled them under, but Nathan held on tight, his small muscles trembling from the effort. "Don't let go. I'll pull you." The water tried to rip her from him, but he didn't give up. With every ounce of strength he had, he pulled until finally, she was out of the river. Coughing, shivering, drenched, but alive. For a moment they lay there, panting on the log, feeling the storm roar around them. Then the girl's eyes met his. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Nathan opened his mouth to say something, but the sound of frantic footsteps in the mud made both of them look back. A woman ran, desperately grabbing the girl into her arms. Police arrived soon after, hurried voices, distant sirens. Nathan was pulled away, questions were asked, everything happened too fast. When the girl was taken away, she looked back one last time. She tried to say something but was pulled away. And then, she disappeared from his life. Time passed. The world moved on. But that moment stayed forever. What Nathan didn't know was that, years later, she would return. And what she would do would change everything. Time has a strange way of erasing memories, or burying them, waiting for the right moment to bring them back. For Nathan Reynolds, that rainy night by the riverbank became just a distant fragment of his childhood. He never knew the name of the girl he saved, never heard from her again. But somehow that moment shaped who he would become. Now, years later, Nathan was no longer a boy running through the mud. He had become one of the most respected lawyers in the city. Intelligent, determined, tireless in his pursuit of truth. His specialty? Taking down powerful men who thought they could manipulate justice. And on the other side of the city, a woman moved through the lit streets of New York, a recorder hidden in her pocket, her eyes sharp to every detail around her. Emily Carter. Investigative journalist. Her job? Exposing secrets that no one else dared to touch. But Emily wasn't just a fearless reporter. She carried something within her that she had never fully understood, a distant memory shrouded in time. An outstretched arm, a voice screaming in the storm, hands holding hers when everything seemed lost. She had never forgotten the boy who saved her. Never. But life had taken her down another path. Now, unknowingly, their destinies were about to collide again. And what would bring them together this time wouldn't be a rescue but a dangerous secret. Because Emily was about to face the most explosive case of her career. A corruption scheme, dirty money, and silenced voices. And at the center of it all, a name that would send a chill down her spine. Richard Langley. The untouchable magnate. The most powerful man in the city. And the man behind a web of crimes that no one had ever been able to prove. Emily knew exposing him could cost her life. But there was something in the files she found, something that made her shudder. A name, a connection, a detail buried in the past that would change everything. She needed help. Someone brave enough to take on Langley in court. Someone who wouldn't be intimidated by threats. And there was only one name capable of that. Nathan Reynolds. The boy who saved her. The man who now held her fate in his hands, without even knowing it. The reunion was inevitable. But when their paths finally crossed, what Emily would do would change both of their lives forever. Absolute power creates invisible enemies. And Richard Langley knew this better than anyone. An empire built on dirty contracts, silenced voices, and a trail of destruction that no one dared to expose. He ruled the city from the shadows, with judges in his pocket, politicians under his control, and an army of lawyers ready to crush any threat. But now, someone was about to challenge this empire. And that someone was Emily Carter. She spent months collecting information. She dug through confidential files, found forgotten victims, and followed trails that no one had ever dared to follow. Each discovery took her deeper into a dangerous maze. And then, she found the proof. An old document hidden beneath layers of forged records. Inside, a secret transaction. Dirty money linked to an unexpected name. A name that made her blood run cold. Nathan Reynolds. Emily felt her heart race. No, it couldn't be him. The boy who saved her, the just and incorruptible lawyer, involved with Langley? But she knew the truth about that powerful man. She knew that Langley was capable of anything. If Nathan was in that document, he was either an ally or a victim. And Emily needed to find out. That was how, for the first time in years, she typed that name into her phone. Every tap on the keyboard made her more nervous. The phone rang 3 times before a firm voice answered. Nathan Reynolds. Emily took a deep breath. We need to talk. No. There was a pause. A pause filled with questions. Who are you? I'm the girl you saved. And I'm about to save you from something much worse. The silence on the other end was absolute. But at that moment, fate had already been sealed. Because, unknowingly, Emily had just pulled the thread of a much bigger secret. And when Nathan found out what lay behind the name Langley, there would be no turning back. The bar chosen by Emily Carter was discreet, almost forgotten in the chaos of New York. She didn't want attention. She needed confidentiality. Sitting in the darkest corner, she held a cup of cold coffee, her mind spinning. What if he didn't come? Maybe she had made a mistake. Maybe Nathan Reynolds had already been corrupted by the system like so many others. But 10 minutes later, the door opened. He entered. Nathan. Older, more serious. The same sharp gaze that had toppled giants in the courts. The man who turned justice into his weapon. Emily felt a lump in her throat. The last time she saw him, they were covered in mud, fighting against the storm. Now, they were about to face something much bigger. Nathan sat across from her, his eyes fixed on her. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. So, you're the girl from the river. She swallowed hard. And you're the boy who saved me. For a moment, time seemed to rewind. But that moment lasted only a second. Nathan leaned forward, his elbows on the table. What do you want from me? Emily slid an envelope across to him. Richard Langley. Nathan didn't react. But something in his eyes changed. He took the envelope, opened it, and examined the papers. Each line he read made his muscles tense more. When he reached the last document, he exhaled heavily. This can't be real. But it was. Emily watched him closely. He was shocked but not surprised. As if he already knew Langley was a monster, but never imagined how deep his corruption ran. Your name is in these documents, Nathan. I didn't know if you were an accomplice or a target. Now I'm starting to understand. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. When he opened them again, there was something different there. Determination. What do you want me to do? Emily didn't hesitate. I want to take down Langley. And you're the only one who can do that. Silence weighed between them. But then, Nathan took the papers and tucked them into his suit jacket. If we're going to do this, we need a plan. And we need it fast. Emily nodded. The reunion fate had prepared wasn't a coincidence. It was the beginning of something much bigger. But they didn't know Langley was already one step ahead. And that, by deciding to face him, they had just signed their own sentences. The plan seemed solid. Simple, direct, and lethal for Richard Langley. Nathan and Emily spent hours dissecting each document, every financial movement, every silenced witness. They had enough to bring him down. But they knew they couldn't make a mistake. One wrong move and Langley would crush them. He has eyes everywhere, Emily. If we mess this up, we won't get a second chance. She knew that. But for the first time, she felt like she had an advantage. An anonymous source had agreed to hand over a complete dossier, evidence linking Langley directly to organized crime, money laundering, and ordered murders. The meeting was set for that night. Midnight. An underground parking lot. Nathan didn't like it. This smells like a trap. All big stories smell like traps, Nathan. Emily shot back. That's how we know we're getting too close to the truth. He exhaled slowly. Then let's be careful. The underground parking lot. The place smelled like gasoline and rusted metal. Lights flickered on the ceiling, casting distorted shadows on the concrete walls. Emily checked the time. 2 minutes left. Nathan looked around, tense. He could feel something was off. Then a black car slowly entered the parking lot. It stopped a few meters away from them. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, dressed in black, his face hidden beneath a hood. Nathan and Emily exchanged glances. You brought the materials? Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The man took a step forward, then another. You don't understand, do you? His voice was cold. Nathan furrowed his brow. It was then that he saw the reflection on the car's body. More men were appearing behind them. Run! Nathan yelled, pulling Emily by the arm. Gunshots. The sound exploded in the parking lot, echoing against the concrete walls. Nathan and Emily threw themselves behind a pillar, their hearts pounding. Shit. I knew it. Nathan gritted his teeth. Emily pulled a small pistol from her pocket. Are you armed? I'm a lawyer, Emily. Not a cop. Then you'd better run faster. They darted through the parking lot, dodging bullets, jumping over car hoods, trying to find an escape. But Langley's men were many, and they were surrounded. Then a black SUV skidded into the parking lot entrance. The headlights blinded the henchmen. The passenger door slammed open. Get in now. Emily didn't think twice. She jumped into the car, pulling Nathan with her. The SUV screeched its tires and disappeared into the night. Inside the car, panting, they looked at the driver. Nathan's eyes went wide. Ben, Nathan's private investigator, gripped the wheel tightly. If you wanted to die today, you could have warned me earlier. Emily slumped against the seat, still trying to catch her breath. Do you think Langley knows we're after him? Ben laughed. A dark laugh. He doesn't just know. He's waiting for you. Nathan closed his eyes for a second. They had fallen right into Langley's hands. The hunt was now personal, and the worst was yet to come. The night had fallen, but the feeling that the danger was just beginning lingered in the air, like a ghost that didn't want to be seen. Nathan and Emily were in an improvised hideout, far from Langley and his goons. The concrete and wood walls seemed to almost swallow the sound of their heavy breathing. Ben watched them closely, his investigative gaze not missing a single movement. Langley knows we're after him, he said, finally breaking the silence. And he won't wait long to strike back. Emily sat up straighter in her chair, her gaze fixed on the computer in front of her, where she was sifting through more records. But why now? He has everything, he's on top. What does Langley want with you? Nathan let out a bitter laugh. The question isn't what he wants from us, Emily. The question is what he wants to hide. And I'd bet it's a lot more connected to me than you realize. Emily raised an eyebrow, surprised. What do you mean by that? Ben sighed, looking at Nathan as if he knew the moment had finally arrived. You know who Langley really is, don't you? Nathan stared into the void. There it was, the moment when he could no longer hide. The secret he had kept for so long. Langley isn't just a businessman, Emily. He's not just the magnate everyone fears. He has a past that involves me more than you think. The tension in the room rose, and Emily felt the temperature climb. He's part of the reason my life changed. Nathan began to stand, his hands trembling slightly. When I was younger, when I first met him, Langley was different. He wasn't the monster everyone knows now. He's the one who ruined my family. Ben walked over to the table, grabbed a glass of water, and handed it to Nathan. Tell her, Nathan. She needs to know. Nathan looked at Emily, his eyes narrowing, as if deciding to finally reveal what he had kept inside. I'm not just a lawyer, Emily. I'm the son of Helen Reynolds, a woman Langley destroyed, and with her, my childhood. Emily swallowed hard. Helen Reynolds. She remembered the name. A woman known in the city who worked as an investigative journalist in the 80s. She had been one of the first to expose Langley's corruption before he took over his empire. But something happened. She disappeared without a trace. Nathan sat back down, the weight of the truth settling on his shoulders. When I was a child, my mother was investigating Langley. She discovered he was behind a series of banking frauds and money laundering, but she never had the chance to reveal everything. Langley silenced her. She disappeared and I was forgotten. Emily remained silent, her mind spinning. So he wasn't just seeking justice. He was seeking revenge. Nathan took a deep breath. I was sent to an orphanage and Langley kept rising, more powerful each day. What he did to my mother, and what he did to others, was just the beginning of something much bigger. He's not just a businessman, Emily. He's a machine that destroys lives. And he's still doing it. Now he wants to destroy everything my mother built, destroy any chance I have of seeking justice. Ben, who had been quiet until now, spoke with a deep voice. Langley has a lot of skeletons in his closet, Nathan. But he never imagined you'd come back to destroy them. Nathan looked at Emily, the weight of the truth in his eyes. I'm going to bring Langley down, Emily. No matter what he does. No matter how deep he goes. I'll get justice for my mother. Emily watched him, feeling the weight of determination in his voice. She no longer knew who to trust, but she knew one thing. Nathan wasn't just seeking justice. He was seeking revenge. And that changed everything. The city was burning, but no one could see it. The flames were there, burning in the underworld of corruption where Langley reigned. And now, Nathan was closer than ever to seeing Langley's empire crumble. But like every great battle, Langley's trial would be fought in the shadows. And for Nathan, this trial would be more personal than he had ever imagined. The morning of the trial arrived. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, lawyers, influential members of the city, all waiting to see what would happen. The battle would be fierce, and the tension in the air was palpable. Nathan and Emily entered through the main door, their eyes fixed on the room. In the back, Langley was there, sitting like a king on his throne of arrogance. He looked unbeatable, with an unbearably calm smile, his eyes as cold as ice, knowing the odds were in his favor. But there was something else in Nathan. Something he didn't have before. Revenge. Determination. He had already lost so much to Langley. Now he had a mission. Nathan walked to the defense table. His gaze met Langley's for a brief second. The two recognized each other. The clash was about to begin. "We're going to destroy him, Nathan," Emily whispered, sitting next to him. Nathan gave a slight smile. She was more determined than ever. But the first step wouldn't be easy. The prosecution had an incredibly well-built case, but Langley had more than one card up his sleeve. He had the power. He had the system. And then the first blows came. The evidence Emily and Nathan had gathered was laid on the table. Records of illicit transactions. Videos of secret meetings. Testimonies from victims. But in the meantime, Langley smiled. Each accusation seemed to be easily refuted. His lawyers dismantled every piece of evidence with surgical skill, creating a web of doubts, spreading lies and half-truths. But Nathan knew what was at stake. He knew the fight wasn't just for those papers. It wasn't just about the money or the corruption. It was about his mother. When Nathan stood up for his first statement, his voice rang out clear and strong. He was no longer just speaking as a lawyer. He was speaking as a man who had already lost everything to Langley. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we are not just seeking justice. We are seeking something more. Something that was lost. Something Langley destroyed." Emily watched with her eyes fixed on Nathan. She knew he was risking everything, not just his career but his own life. Langley was unbeatable, but somehow, Nathan seemed to have an invisible strength, something the prosecution couldn't see. Something that transcended the courtroom. But the most critical moment was yet to come. Langley finally stood up from his seat. The room fell into absolute silence. He walked to the center of the room, his steps sounding like thunder on the marble floor. Langley's gaze was cold, calculating. "Nathan, you don't understand, do you? I built this empire from scratch. Every move you see was planned, orchestrated with precision. I'm not just a man, I'm a force." The words fell like stones, heavy and relentless. He was no longer trying to defend himself. He was making a threat. And then something happened. Langley's lawyer took a videotape and showed it to the court. The image was of Nathan as a child, standing next to his mother. Langley was there, in the background of the footage. "Is this what you wanted to hide, Nathan? Your mother, the journalist, trying to destroy my life, the same one who fed you hatred for years?" The world seemed to stop for a second. Nathan froze. How did Langley know about this? It was a strategic move. He was trying to turn the tables. But instead of defeating him, Langley's strike only strengthened Nathan's resolve. The truth was clear now. Langley wasn't just a criminal. He had destroyed lives, manipulated systems, and now he was trying to destroy Nathan. Nathan looked directly at Langley's face, his eyes full of fire. He no longer cared about the room. It didn't matter what Langley did to him. Now what mattered was the truth. "You're not getting out of this, Langley. I'm going to bring you down." And with those words, the courtroom seemed to explode in a collective cry. The fight was far from over, but at that moment, the tables had turned. The sound of the judge's gavel echoed through the courtroom, but at that moment, it was no longer justice that mattered. The truth, as bitter as it was finally being revealed. The battle had taken on much greater proportions than anyone had imagined, and now something else was about to happen. Nathan stood, his body tense, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. His gaze fixed on Langley's face, no longer filled with fear, but pure determination. He would not let the man who destroyed his life win. Not now, not when the truth was finally within reach. But as always, Langley had a trick up his sleeve. He watched everything with a soft smile, as though he knew the end was near, but not in the way Nathan imagined. Langley looked directly at Nathan and said, with a calm that was almost chilling, You think you've won, don't you, Nathan? That you'll destroy me. But you're doing exactly what I want. Nathan froze. What did he want? He didn't have time to get lost in riddles, not now. But Langley didn't stop. He stood up, and with the confidence of a man who knew he had complete control of the situation, he spoke to everyone in the room. I'm not just a man. I am the Empire. And you're about to learn the hard lesson that no one is stronger than the system. Before anyone could react, a burst of screams filled the room. A figure appeared at the door of the courtroom. It was Emily. But something was wrong. She rushed in, her eyes wide with terror. She was trembling, her lips pale, and the moment she crossed the door, Langley signaled. Suddenly, 2 security guards quickly approached Emily. No, Emily, no. Nathan shouted, running toward her, but it was too late. Langley looked directly at him, a cold smile on his face. I did what you asked, Nathan. Now the decision is in your hands. Nathan looked at Emily, his eyes filling with indescribable fear. She was being pulled away, struggling, trying to break free. Langley, no. Nathan shouted. He ran toward Emily, but Langley just laughed. If you want to save her, Nathan, you know what you need to do. The pressure was immense. Nathan was paralyzed. What was Langley suggesting? What did he want him to do? Then, at the moment Emily was finally forced into a corner of the courtroom, Langley made his final move. He looked at Nathan and his words fell like a bomb. I always knew you had your mother's blood, Nathan. I always knew you were strong, determined. So show me now what you're capable of. If you want her to live, give me what I want. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. Emily was in danger. Nathan could see her, but he couldn't reach her. The only thing standing between her and freedom was Nathan's decision. And then he did the unthinkable. Accept. Nathan said, his voice broken but firm. He knew it was a terrible choice, but there was no other choice. Emily looked at him with an expression of pure desperation, her tears falling. Nathan, no. Don't do this. But Nathan already knew what needed to be done. He had to sacrifice his own freedom, his own life, to ensure hers. He stepped forward, Langley's eyes fixed on him, and with a gesture, he gave it all. He surrendered himself to Langley. The courtroom fell into absolute silence. All eyes were on him. He knew what he had just done. He had made the greatest sacrifice of his life, and now all that was left was to wait for what would come next. Langley finally gave a victorious smile, but Nathan noticed something in Emily's eyes. There was a spark, something stronger than anything Langley could imagine. She wasn't giving up. She wasn't surrendered. Nathan knew in that moment that his sacrifice would not be in vain. The courtroom was in deadly silence, tension taking over every corner of the room. Nathan stood, the decision made. He had sacrificed his freedom, his life for Emily, but deep down he knew something was still to come. Something Langley couldn't foresee, something that would make all the difference. Langley, with a victorious smile on his face, looked directly at Nathan, as if he had already defeated the man who had challenged him for so long. His thugs still surrounded Emily, but now the focus was on Nathan. You made the right choice, Nathan. Langley said, his voice calm and venomous. Now you understand what it means to face true power. But Nathan was no longer afraid. He felt something different, a strength that had risen within him, something he hadn't known he possessed. He looked at Emily, who was standing firm despite the situation. Her gaze said it all. She was not defeated. Suddenly, a movement at the courtroom door made all eyes turn. Emily, with a spark in her eyes, looked toward the entrance, where an unexpected figure appeared. It was Ben. But he wasn't alone. He carried a USB drive, which was immediately handed to Nathan's lawyer. Langley frowned, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion. What is this? Langley growled, discomfort evident in his voice. Ben looked at Langley, his voice calm but filled with a threatening coldness. This is what you always feared. Nathan looked at Ben and then at the USB drive. He knew what was on it. And he also knew that this file was the key to victory. While everyone waited in silence, Nathan's lawyer quickly plugged the USB into the court's computer. On the screen appeared images, documents, records, emails, all linked to Langley. But these weren't ordinary pieces of evidence. They were the ones Langley never thought could exist. They were records showing Langley directly involved in a scheme of murders and fraud, revealing his ties with corrupt politicians, underworld businessmen, and even with the death of Helen Reynolds, Nathan's mother. It was the final piece of the puzzle. Langley recoiled. His eyes widened. He tried to maintain composure, but panic was setting in. He knew he could no longer escape. The evidence was irrefutable. He looked at Nathan, fear overtaking his face, finally feeling the weight of the truth crushing him. "This is impossible," Langley murmured, his eyes shifting from rage to desperation. Nathan's lawyer, with a triumphant smile, made the computer show all the details to the courtroom, leaving everyone present stunned. There was no room for denial anymore. Langley was done. And then Nathan stood up, his voice now firm like never before. "You thought you could control everything, Langley. But you forgot one thing. The truth always comes to light." Langley tried to move, his thugs began to approach, but there was no way out. The police were already entering through the main door, ready to arrest Langley and his allies. And it was when Langley, with eyes almost devoid of emotion, turned to Nathan. You don't understand. There was no other way. I did what I had to do." But Nathan interrupted him, his eyes cold. "I understand perfectly, Langley. You made choices. Now the consequences are yours." With that, the room exploded in a frantic whirlwind of reactions. Some clapped, others were stunned, but justice had finally been done. Emily, who had remained silent until then, looked at Nathan, tears in her eyes. She walked toward him, and when they met, she embraced him with all the strength she had. They had been through hell together, and now they were finally free. But the truth about what Langley had done, about what Nathan had sacrificed, was deeper than anyone could imagine. He had not only avenged his mother but also freed many other lives Langley had destroyed over the years. As the police took Langley out of the courtroom, the room fell into silence. The weight of justice had finally been achieved, but the cost was high. Nathan knew nothing would ever be the same. What he had lost could never be recovered, but he finally had what he had always sought: the truth. Nathan and Emily's story hadn't ended there, but their journey had changed forever. They looked at each other, certain that now they could build something new, something stronger than everything they had faced. And deep down, the greatest victory wasn't Langley's arrest, but the liberation of themselves.